as you know, WILPF is celebrating 110 years this year. And then it coincides with Beijing and it coincides with the WPS. So this is not actually a coincidence. This is a real remarkable synergy that WILPF has been cultivating for 110 years. So it's really appropriate to have this type of event that pays tribute to the longevity of the dedication, the commitment, the creativity, and the enormous amount of energy that has been invested by millions of WILPF members around the world over the last 110 years. So I just firstly wanted to pay tribute to that history and to say to all of the members of the panel today, I wish I could stay longer, but I'm really grateful that I've had the opportunity to at least come and to connect and to say very publicly that this is a huge part of why it is a deep privilege to join WILPF as Secretary General. The second part I wanted to mention is just this responsibility that at this moment in time, it does feel like there are almost cataclysmic forces that are really undermining a lot of the progress that has been made over the last 10 years, 30 years, 110 years. And I think one of the messages that I've been both sending and I've got such an overwhelming response back from donor states, from UN entities, from civil society, from activists around the world, is that this is a moment where WILPF's voice and its messages are actually needed more than ever. One of the reasons I was so thrilled and felt so aligned with this role and with this organization is because of the bravery. I think what we're witnessing around the world is a distinct lack of bravery and against forces and interests that are fundamentally not aligned with values. So at times like this, it's where we actually need to be far more conscious of how do we use our community and our solidarity in really strategic and coherent ways. I think one of WILPF's strengths is that we have this incredible diversity of members and sections across the globe, and yet we find common messages that we can actually use to have impact. And so I think in some ways today, like this event is really a testament to not just the longevity of commitment, but an enduring commitment to have impact in the world in whatever forces we might be facing, whatever influences we might be challenged by, but ultimately to draw strength from the diverse community of WILPFers around the world, and also with this underlying consistent message that we have been delivering for 110 years. And hopefully, I'd like to say we wouldn't be here in 110 years because we will have achieved our goals, but I think, that feels less likely. And so it's really a moment to, I think, galvanize and consolidate all of the energy that does exist around the world, and try and continue to strengthen the type of messages and impact we have, because there aren't that many voices like WILPF around the world. I would go further and say often it's a very unique voice, and this is what allows us, I think, to have a lot of influence in circles. So I think I would just leave my comments there by saying, yes, there's a responsibility at times where it feels quite daunting, and at the same time, there's a lot of joy in the solidarity of coming together. That's what CSW really highlights. And I think that's what WILPF as a movement highlights as well. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amrita. Well, the next person I'm going to introduce is Linda Lowe. And Linda founded the Community Leadership Dialogues in 2016. And it was after the presidential debates of 2016. And she thought that would kind of be the end of her work in that area, but she's certainly gone on to other places. As the director of APCO, a global advisory and advocacy firm, she applied her communications and advocacy skills to provide strategic counsel to international NGOs and corporate ESG teams. So we're so pleased and honored that she has now joined us at WILPF US, and she started as our executive director on March 3rd. So let's give her a big welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Jed said, my name is Linda, and I want to say thank you, Jed and Tina and WILPF International for organizing today. I kind of want to get a read of who's in the room. So by show of hands, who here calls the United States home? Okay. And by a show of hands, who's visiting from other countries? Okay, great. Well, it's lovely to see you all and welcome. So yes, my name is Linda. I am Canadian by nationality, Chinese by ethnicity. Began my American journey by marrying a wonderful American guy. I used to work for the International Red Cross overseas for a number of years, made my way here, and I'm so proud to be a WILPfer. I actually formally joined in my new role last week, but I've been like lurking behind the scenes for a few months. Let's just say that, getting to know WILPF and these amazing, strong, bold women. And so we're gathered here today to talk about this intersection between women and armed conflict and the environment. And I'm excited to get on the peace train with all of you through Robin's documentary. I don't know if some of you have seen it, but I hope our tech is fixed and you'll be able to see some today. So imagine when you were walking in, we wanted to show you the train revving up, make you feel like you're boarding that train with us. So pretend you just stepped on this symbolic train with us, okay? And we're starting to like roll out of the station together. And this was a 21-day journey, and I'm not going to steal your thunder, Robin. I know you're going to talk about it, but essentially, I'm excited to explore this documentary with you, where we've been and where we're going, especially because this topic of armed conflict has affected my family personally. I'm guessing it's affected all of your families in some way, whether currently or past generations. My stepfather is or was a refugee from Vietnam. And, you know, he fled a time when lots of chemicals were being dropped, bombed, you know, when chemicals, you know, that leached into the ground, into the waters, chemicals that the winds blew from northern Vietnam to central Vietnam, chemicals that have, I know you all know, harmful legacies for generations to come, and which have stayed, the legacies of which have stayed with my stepfather and the Vietnamese side of his family, quite frankly, forever. I want to say that amidst this legacy of war, I am so proud to be standing with WILPF, fairly new. Amrita, I think you have like 6 months on me, maybe? You joined 3 to 6 months ago? 3 weeks. 3 weeks. So we're very new. We have a lot to learn from all of you in this room, from each other. I want to learn from you, Amrita. And so I think I'm 10 days into the job. But I want to say I am so proud to be with WILPF because, as you said, Amrita, we are bold, strong voices and will continue to be at a time when others are afraid to be. And I'm so proud that one of WILPF US's National Issues Committee is a committee called Disarm and End Wars, which Robin is a fearless leader in, and others. And they are bold women, and they are doing the work like you all are. So for example, almost exactly 1 month ago today, a bunch of WILPF women and men in California, you know, I think of California, you think sunshine and water and beaches, but no, these WILPF women and men at 1 in the morning, you know, some in their pajamas, some not, showed up at a Space Force base. I cannot remember, maybe Vandenberg Space Force base in California at 1 in the morning to witness and to protest against the testing of an intercontinental ballistic missile. WILPF women and men have been protesting at the site for decades. So before I was born, I'm 50, before I was born, and they will continue to do so. And just here in New York last week, a number of WILPF US women, along with other WILPF women from around the world and men, advocated at a big UN meeting where a number of states that are party to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons gathered and convened, and WILPF women were there standing strong to advocate behind the scenes in diplomacy and in front of the scenes protesting, right? So right where we are today. And I really want to share that all throughout last year, many WILPF women and men were protesting at the physical sites and headquarters of the companies in the US that build these weapons. So they continue to do the work every day. We are committed to doing this work unwaveringly. And I think I'm being told I have 1 minute. Okay. I say this, and yet globally, and in particular in the US, military spending is increasing. In fact, this year, the Department of Defense is projected to spend $850 billion on military spending. And at the same time, you know, I am sad to say that culturally in society here in America, I'm seeing a militarization, weaponization of culture. And I'm not just talking about civilians taking up weapons and arms. I'm talking about the weaponization of the very culture that we hold, the culture and diversity that we hold dear, weaponization of race, of culture, of gender. And this is so disheartening. I know we are all disheartened. And at the same time, I want to lean into Amrita's messages of solidarity and joy. I am disheartened. Let me tell you, I'm grateful I'm with WILPF because there have been days when I wanted to curl up in the corner and cry, right? But I feel lifted by all of you. When we show up together, when I learn from you, and especially when we share stories of joy. And I'm supposed to stop. So I want to lend this opening comments with this sentiment. I want you to reach back into your brain and I want to ask you, when was the time that you felt like you had a breakthrough in your community, with your friends, whether it was protesting at a site, whether it was helping a neighbor, serving your community, when you remembered that what you did that it mattered and that you had impact. And in these moments when we feel disheartened, I want you to come back to that feeling and remember that you are surrounded by WILPF women and men, and we're here with you and we're here for each other. And that's a sentiment I want to kick off this conversation with, against the harder conversations we're going to have today around nuclear arms and weapon and war. So back to Jan. Yeah.
So we've had one of our speakers introduced. I want to introduce the next three. Those of you at home, we're not going to move the phone back and forth, so you'll see them though when they do speak. So let me tell you about the next three speakers. First of all, Robin Lloyd. And Robin is a Burlington, Vermont activist. She's a philanthropist, she's a filmmaker. And I would say that her investments aren't just monetary, because time and time again, she has proven her nonviolent civil disobedience. Someone said about her, she's always crossed the line. In November of 2005, in fact, she was taken into custody outside the Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Cooperation, formerly the School of Americas, and that was in Fort Benning, Georgia, and she spent 3 months in prison for that. Going back to crossing the line, people say that's one of the most magical things about Robin. You go somewhere new and you don't know where you're going to end up. So we can think about her on that trip 30 years ago. Nina Potarska is to my left here, and to my left. She's a gender expert. She's on peace building and conflict resolution, and she's from WILPF, Ukraine. She has experience managing NGOs and research projects, as well as in research and analysis. And since 2016, she's been the national coordinator of WILPF's group in Ukraine. The program's goals are to increase women's participation, ensure that gender aspects are taken into account in national and international structures. Tara Vessifi, to my right here, is a... Okay, very good. Well, then let's go yay for Robin. So Tara is a lawyer and strategist. She has spent her career learning from human rights defenders, journalists, activists, and technologists about methods and approaches to optimizing the use of digital evidence for legal accountability and advocacy measures. Her resume includes being part of the War Crimes Research Office, where she explored the nexus of law, technology, and social impact in the aftermath of the 2011 Arab uprisings. So you'll hear from her later today also. So next, I'm going to turn it over to Robin. I think we're going to see a clip first, and Robin will be our next speaker.
So, I mean, what I'd like us to do is look back at the foremothers before the peace train, which were the women who founded WILPF, who had the courage to cross the ocean to try to make peace in a warring situation. And And they were such, there was a suffragette, Aletta Jacobs from Europe that sent a letter, or I guess it was telegrams in those days, that said, listen, we have to speak up about this war. It was 1914, 1915, the war was already raging, and she sent letters to telegrams to Jane Addams and to my grandmother. My grandmother was involved with this, and so I have to read. I didn't know her, except she died when I was 6 years old, Lola Maverick Lloyd. But someone who did know her wrote, she is truly a live wire and a brick and everything else that goes to make up a militant pacifist. So she was quite a woman. And so those were some of the inspirations for creating the Peace Train. The person who was most behind it was Babsie Lochbuehler. Anyone know her? She was a head of German WILPF at the time, and you can imagine organizing a train. This is only with peace women on it. So it had to be specially scheduled. This was only 5 years after the fall of the Soviet Union, so the countries we went through were just kind of organizing their governments and were in some cases hard to work with. And then talking about borders, the peace train had to go from Russia to China. And you may not be aware, but the size of the gauge of the trains changes. So how do you cross a border when your train can't cross? So what happens, they stop, they lift up the train, they remove all of the wheels and put another set of wheels on so that the train can proceed. So what a very
That's the same we do it each trip from Poland to Ukraine. It's the same.
Really, wow. So there are, in terms of the film itself, which is an hour long, the first half is about the train trip itself. The second half is the NGO forum, which took place outside of Beijing, and just about 5 minutes of the whole film deal with the actual conference of the governments making their decision. But briefly, there was a woman from Sri Lanka who represented WILPF, who spoke at the government conference, and that's in the film for a few minutes. So we'll look at 2 clips to look at the question, did the Beijing Declaration walk the talk? And so one of the 12 resolutions from the Beijing Declaration was women in armed conflict. And so let's look at that clip.
The peace train arrived at the largest international women's gathering in history. For many who came, it was the experience of a lifetime. Many of us made the peace tent our home. Women from the Pacific and Africa said that militarism, the arms trade, and nuclear testing were major stumbling blocks to development.
Against nuclear testing, the churches are against nuclear testing in the Pacific, the women are against nuclear testing in the Pacific. The 21st century is still clean. Nobody has muddied up or violated the history of the 21st century. The 20th century is the most violent century that we can remember. An extraordinary violence where humankind, mankind, has the audacity to drop genocidal weapons, not once, but twice on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Leaves its radioactive fallout and kills people for generations afterwards. No women were in on the decision to drop that bomb. Until women become 50% of the action at every single level of society, I don't believe we are going like to have peace?
Wow, okay, so I really tried to get Cora Weiss to come here, but I was not able to reach her, but what a powerful speaker and identifying the problems then and the fact that in many ways we have not made the process, the progress we were hoping for. But there were wonderful things that happened after the Beijing conference and after the peace train. For example, Cora Weiss was very involved in the Hague Appeal for Peace that took place in 1999. It sought to sow the seeds for the abolition of war, declare peace a human right, and design a culture of peace. Those are now words that are much more common than they were before. 8,000 people attended. I attended. I brought some students from my high school near me, and it was inspiring. But then time goes on. The next year, the good thing that happened was that the Security Council of the United Nations adopted resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security, and that has become a sort of a cornerstone of not only international WILPF, but the United Nations. One of the problems with that in terms of implementing what you would call a feminist foreign policy, and there have been several wonderful workshops this week on that issue of feminist foreign policy, is that, well, Hillary Clinton came to the Beijing conference and famously declared that women's rights are human rights. But while she was Secretary of State, she helped engineer the attack on Libya, which overthrew, as we know, Omar Gaddafi and destroyed one of the most stable countries in Africa, and which spread weapons and chaos throughout the Sahel region of Africa. So the resolution 1325 demands that women must be present at the peace table. But the fact is that women represented only 19% of the delegations in UN-led peace processes in 2020, and that's down from the year before. So we're in a declining participation in our activity at peace tables, which I think is a really unfortunate fact. There was, of course, no mention in the in 1325 or in the Beijing agreements of the abolition of war. That was the issue. It's called women should be protected in conflict, but the word war is not mentioned in the Beijing Declaration of Action. And I think that's purposefully decided by, the powers that be of the strong countries. Finally, in 2017, the General Assembly of the United Nations convened a United Nations conference to negotiate a legally binding instrument to prohibit nuclear weapons, leading towards their total abolition. So now the treaty prohibiting nuclear weapons, 73 countries have signed and ratified that treaty, but none of those countries are nuclear nations. So everyone's working on it, but that's a serious problems. And those nations, of course, we know are modernizing their arsenal right now. So my summary is, and you're going to tell me I don't have any minutes, that the nations are not walking the talk. They are walking away from the talk. In fact, they are rewording the talk to support authoritarianism and patriarchy. So we are in dire straits. That's all I want to say.
Sometimes it's difficult to start even talk about something related to peace because as it was already told, I'm with WILPF last 9 years. It's a quite long period of my life. And I started my research about women everyday, like transformation in women's everyday life during the war. And it's more about reproductive labor or care work, which women providing during the war, because it's our society putting these expectations on us. It's not depend on how we believe in feminism or in patriarchy. It's how our society built now, and we cannot change it now immediately. And during the war, we have all these things around us, and we still have all these things, all these demands from our, I don't know, kids, partners, parents who are expecting our care from us. And of course, we are providing these things for free, and we also should be happy. But during the war, it's difficult to be happy because it's additional stress, and especially after full-scale invasion. And Ukraine, I think this it's already history, and it's also a history of feminist movement, and also one of the biggest challenge of nowadays for feminist movement, because I remember first months of full-scale invasion, there was a discussion around arming Ukraine or not arming Ukraine. And I think in this discussion, we missed something very important. It's a solidarity, and where is our place in the movement, in the peace activism, and where is our place and our reaction? Because when you live in or even I would try to extend the topic, because it's also a question about theory and practice. Because living in a safe place, it's easy to be pacifist when you're far from all these challenges, when your life not at risk and the everyday risk which we face in Ukraine. And you have a different lines on this war too. But staying in Ukraine, and I'm living in Canada, but since last year. And I'm still traveling back and forth to Ukraine for a few weeks, for 1 month, just to be in touch, just to understand how my friends, my colleagues, my Ukrainian feminists living. And also for me, I understand how it's difficult to be pacifist and protect peace when you are under the shelling every day, when you are just trying to find security for you, for your family. And of course, the most terrible things I ever experienced, when you cannot provide security for your kids. You feel, I don't know, helpless, hopeless, and I wish never experienced this feeling. But I think these discussions still on the table, and we need to continue this discussion, how we can answer these challenges and how we can build solidarity instead of protecting our feminist values. Because for me, it's a big challenge how we can make a connection between our theory and our everyday life and our everyday experience during the war. And where is this a tiny space for discussion about peace? and it's still on the table, and I want to continue this discussion. And this year I feel energy to participate in this, because last 2 years I was very down, and it was many other problems with my group, with the security of my group, with the evacuation, with my family problem. But now I think it's even I wish I can participate more, and we still need to discuss this. Thank you.
What do we want? Food rights. When do we want it? Now. What do we want?
And we really have entered a new political economic era. An era which is on the one hand called the era of free trade, but on the ground everywhere people are struggling against a new totalitarianism that this free trade is about. The totalitarianism that goes with a new kind of rule, a rule by global corporations. That's the setting, that's the social, political, economic setting in which we as people, we as women, are living today. And we have to create new protectionisms for ourselves on our terms.
Lands that were originally meant for food, that lands that were kept aside for food production today are being turned over into cash crop production, because it has all to be exported out of the country. Today, on the lands where millions of women toil and live by, which was their motherland, that is being taken away from them, and they are getting nothing in return. What they are being told is that if you cannot have rice and ragi and milk, it doesn't matter. You can have Baskin and Robbins ice cream. You can have McDonald's. You can have all these fast food junk. So that they are being told that, and this is the way they are being deprived. This is the way the right of survival is being taken away.
Free trade is basically a system which says free, absolute freedom for commercial entities, particularly the transnational corporations, to make money at any cost with no regulation and no limits. Right with McDonald's.
Right, like that.
It's the ultimate symbol of cultural imperialism in the late 20th century, when we should be celebrating cultural biological diversity. I think the McDonald culture has destroyed more cultural and more biological diversity than any other single emblem in the world. It outdoes Coca-Cola too, because Coca-Cola is just a little bit of water and sugar in it. McDonald's destroys forests, farms, livestock, people's health. If we have to protect the environment and health, we have to get this symbol out of the next millennium.
Why shouldn't Ronald be here?
Ronald never got a visa. He's not part of the women's movement. He's contributed to nothing, and he's not a person either. We welcome men. We don't want plastic advertising that destroys people's health, tempts children to unhealthy food, makes girls enter puberty long before they should be entering it. Everything is wrong with McDonald's.
I'm a rural farmer. And I want to say that we as ladies are links of chains around this global world. And what we are fighting for, we want nobody to come between us and to break one of that links. Whatever we say, we demand laws for it. Okay?
That's actually great that we got that recorded for authenticating this time.
Yes. Okay, I think Vandana and the other speaker just did so well talking about what's happened to our food system. And I think it's kind of where Iowa comes in. I want to introduce myself. My name is Jan Corderman, and I'm from WILPF in Iowa. And I think, you know, we're talking about women that were living it back then, 30 years ago, and I can say that women are still living that today. So in Iowa, we're taking more land out of food production and we're turning it into fuel for gas guzzlers, that ethanol, corn ethanol. And I want to talk about a big one that just happened this year. We're fighting it right now in the Iowa legislature. Bayer, who purchased Monsanto a couple of years ago, they're working over our legislators for this Cancer Gag Act. And we call it the Gag Act because it compares to the Ag Gag Act, which prevents inspectors from going into these CAFOs, these confined animal feeding operations that maybe you've heard about or maybe you've seen one. They're just metal structures. They cost about $500,000 to build, and the animals are just crammed in. No sunlight, no anything, roofs on them. Their poop goes down underneath them. That's where they socialize. It's where they eat. It's where they sleep. And the poop runs into a lagoon, which leaks and ends up polluting our rivers. In Iowa alone, we have half of our rivers, over 750 of our waterways are polluted from confined animal feeding operations. Well, it's a big ag issue. And to add to it now, they've got this Cancer Gag Act. And I just want to tell you what it is. It's hard to even believe. It's to promote the use of Roundup. And if you get sick from Roundup, the law would indemnify Bayer from being sued. So it's already passed the Iowa House. It's happening in a lot of states. I'm really pleased that Oklahoma, which is a state you wouldn't expect, they've been able to fight it back. So I think we'll be able to do that here in Iowa. We are definitely mobilizing against this bill as we are in other states. And Eileen, I wonder if you can make sure everybody has one of those bookmarks that I brought just for the heck of it. I know I got them in here. Okay, good. I got them around a little late. If they stop somewhere, if you can make sure they get all the way around, because they kind of talk about a couple of organizations that we're in coalition with here today that sponsor this particular presentation. So one of those organizations is Food and Water Watch. It's based in Washington, D.C. It's also an NGO, and it focuses on corporate and government accountability relating to food, water, and corporate overreach, just right up WILPF's alley. And also then in Iowa, we have the Iowa Alliance for Responsible Ag. It's a coalition of about 30 groups. And all these groups, including WILPF, we sit on the steering committee of the IARA. We promote sustainable ag methods. So what have we done? Well, we've done a lot of grassroots stuff. We're at farmers markets and we've had rally and lobby days to really get a moratorium on factory farms. We already have 10,000 and we already have over 26 million corporate owned hogs that produce 22 million gallons of untreated liquid manure that goes into our runoff, into our fields. They say it's fertilizer, and it is until it's overruns, and that leads to those impaired waterways. Not to mention health issues and other concerns. We have the second highest rate of cancer in Iowa, and it's still going up. So what do we want? Well, in WILPF, we want an agriculture system that works for farmers and eaters and the environment. And I think we're all on the line to help make sure that happens. I just want to say a word about the bookmarks because there's another issue that we think about. I know we think about as women and moms, and it's animal welfare. Just talking about the pigs that are on that bookmark for you, but it's also chickens, dairy cows, feeder cattle. They're raised in these confinements. Lots of bad things. They cut off their tails, and I don't know if you've seen a pig's tail, but it's really cute. They cut them off because from anxiety, they'll eat each other's tails. But anyway, for the mother sows, they're confined in these areas where they can only go forward and backward a little bit all the time they're pregnant, all the time they're nursing, and it's something that we have to stop. We have the EU prevents that kind of thing happening. In Spain, they prevent that kind of thing happening, and it's time it happened in the U.S. too. So help us get to that point, and I'm going to turn it over so we can open up for any discussion about any of these issues.
Thank you for this event. This is very interesting and inspiring. I come from Italy, and also I would like to express my appreciation for Nina Potarska, speech, because I think that we need to enter into the complexity and contradiction. And I think it's very important that we make research and produce sound knowledge, because otherwise it's too emotional and we cannot build only on emotions. And then I have a practical question, because I really appreciated the videos that you were showing, and also the history of past initiatives, because I think they are very inspiring, and also they are food for thinking. So I wonder if there is an archive, if you have an archive of these videos documenting past experience, such as the peace train. Thank you.
Yeah, I can say that there are copies of Peace Train on the table there. In other words, a DVD. There are 3 copies. Let's say they're for sale for $10. And also it's available for free on my website, greenvalleymedia.org. And you go to WILPF and go down WILPF, and that's the Peace Train is there.
And I would say that the WILPF archives are at Swarthmore Public Library, so this is also there. What other, there's another place where the WILPF archives are kept?
Well, New York Public Library has a lot of.
Yeah.
I'd like to introduce Jesse, who just spoke, who is part of the staff of International WILPF. And are there other staff people here?
Yes.
Yes, please stand up, because this is an amazing, not just this event, but the CSW. Because we in the US get to meet and get to honor and welcome members of WILPF internationally and members of the staff. And there's the International WILPF has a number of people on the payroll.
So my question is really about the socio-political nature of memory. The story that you just told us, every time you tell it, Ms. Robin, I feel like it was a book that was written that I never had a chance to read. When I think about the story of your grandmother and how they got on that ship to go and meet their sisters in Europe, to have that conversation, the 27 women is how I remember you telling us the story, and how that was as a result of World War I, and then World War II happened. And so eventually the League of Nations became the United Nations, and here we are looking at, I don't know, World War III or what. But I'm wondering, how is the United Nations telling that story and holding up that history? It's almost as if they've conveniently forgotten about this history, and WILPF just doesn't seem to be represented in the way that it should as a cornerstone of this institution, for better or for worse. And I think that for me, I see that memory is socio-political. And so I know what it's like to have history rewritten and to have your culture erased. And so how are you all working to institutionalize the memory of WILPF at the United Nations itself?
WILPF was created at the beginning of the First World War. Then there was the Second World War, which engaged the same, it went from the Austro-Hungarian Empire's war to a war between, in France and Germany and many other countries after that. And now the war that's going on in Ukraine is the same region. I mean, it's as if we're refighting the same war. And when you look at maps of the Ukraine, sometimes it's this this area.
Changing shape
it changes, so it's not immortal or immutable. And to my mind, and you may disagree, but when there is a settlement, which we hope will come soon, the dimensions of Ukraine will have to be discussed and maybe changed. And so that hasn't been been able to be discussed until recently, I think. But I'm not sure I'm getting to you were asking about the archives?
More so about what's happening now, or if it's not happening now, maybe it's a projection of something you would like to see, to institutionalize the history of WILPF and its contribution as one of the forerunners to the peace building efforts that we see and sit inside of. Literally this week, how is the United Nations, or what is WILPF able to do to begin to institutionalize that memory? Because I know personally that memory is socio-political, and there needs to be an effort to advocate the story and its full telling, because the history as I know it is not reflected in any of the institutions that we walked in as a collective here this week or since I began to unite.
Well, thank you, and I hope you and others can help to write that history as we go along. Yeah, Eileen?
It so happens that my WILPF branch in Boston is celebrating Emily Greenwald, who happens to be from Boston, and Jane Addams. They, as women, got the second and the third Nobel Peace Prize. So when you get the evaluation request from, well, this CSW, say, let's talk about our Nobel Peace Prize winning women. How's that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments about?
You know, I met for the first time the staff at the WILPF UN office 2 days ago. Jan, really graciously invited me to join, and Robin was there too. I would love for WILPF US to work more closely in collaboration and partnership with WILPF's UN office and WILPF International. If Amrita were still here, I'd say that to her. But I got myself invited to a reception with her tonight, so I'll plant that seed then. So to your point, how do we institutionalize, rewrite history so it's more accurate, so that WILPF women of before us and WILPF women now are part of the story that we're rewriting together? I very much, again, hope that WILPF US can work closely with the WILPF UN office and WILPF International to make that happen. Because if we insert our voices into the story already, that's starting to change history. History starts here. Yeah.
Right, yeah, hold it. I'm Lynn Lane from WILPF Australia. I travelled on the peace train, so the memory of that was wonderful. But I just wanted to add to the comment here. I think we need to remember some of the history and significant achievements that WILPF has been part of at the UN. So we mentioned 1325. WILPF, through Felicity at that time, was part of the drafting group along with Cora Weiss, and there were 8 CSO organisations that actually drafted 1325. So it came from the grassroots up to the UN, and WILPF was instrumental. So let's remember that. Also, a couple of WILPF members actually formed ICANN. And last week we had the whole week of the nuclear and that here and the treaty, but ICANN was formed by a couple of WILPF women and a couple of other friends around a table. So there's parts of WILPF history that have absolutely been instrumental in informing what the UN does, but I don't think we tell the stories amongst WILPF enough.
And ICANN being the International Coalition to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, which was the coalition that created the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, which Robin referred to earlier. Yes, we do have time for a couple questions. Yes.
I'll stand just in
Thank
case
you.
that helps. Jan Strout with the, actually Bozeman, Montana, so relate to what you're talking about around agriculture and food security and cancer. I think it's so important to tell people that what we call Roundup came out of the domestic commercialization of the Agent Orange from the Vietnam War. And that usually gets people's attention when we're talking about cancer and the ways that we're harming our planet and Mother Earth. But I did want to speak actually to what Robin raised earlier, and also to say, Robin, what you're doing with the Peace Train project, the video, the opportunities to really center that. A lot of people didn't realize that of the 40,000 women who were at the Beijing conferences on women, about 500 were from the United States. So we were not as aware in many areas of our country here about the potential and power of what we might call global women's rights, global feminisms, all of those things. And but we're making up obviously for lost time. And also women from the global South had so much to offer in terms of actually having more centering than we did as particularly white women from the United States. But I think the feminist foreign policy is projects are one of the most important things, current and future, to take from Beijing and the Platform for Action. I've been heavily involved in them myself, and just went to a 3-hour 18 presentation program yesterday, plus the ones Robin and I have been in, and there's more. And I think it really serves WILPF so well, because as they're based on nation states, WILPF members, WILPF leaders from the different nations that have the chapters and branches all over the world, I think it's a partnership that would be so strong, particularly not only the peace embedding part of peace development and equality, but also the experience with the security resolutions 1325. They are using those resolutions at the workshops I've been to as a basis of how they are framing the feminist foreign policies themselves. And they are magnificent. There's about 16 to 18 countries with them, many, many more in process. So I urge WILPF, I urge all of you individually that might be interested in looking at this as another possibility for partnership, collaboration, and movement building, because I think all of the elements from a broad human rights perspective and the work specifically to abolish war, to abolish weapons, and have a culture of peace is a very, very good fit for WILPF and for the feminist foreign policy. So thank you.
Okay. Woo, my goodness. Is anyone else like shaking with, I don't know what, there's so much going on here. So I'm going to try to ground us a little bit. Okay, y'all? If you want to participate in this, please do. What I want to do is I'd like to ground us in an exercise. I'm going to take 3 deep breaths. If you'd like to take 3 deep breaths with me, please do. And after we take the 3 deep breaths, I'm going to ask you to fill in the blank. And I'd love for you to remember how you filled in the blank. Okay, y'all? So let's do it together. Please fill in this blank. Home is. Home is. Fill in the blank. Okay, you can open your eyes. It's possible that you couldn't fill in the blank, which is totally fine. I'm 38 years old. It took me 38 years to figure out how to fill in that blank for myself. And the way I answer it is it's alignment between my body, mind, and spirit. That's how I defined it. It took me many decades to figure that out. And the reason why I wanted to ground us in that is to kind of fast forward a little bit from the 90s and the peace train and bring us into today. And for most of us, especially in, any kind of climate, I think the biggest thing is not feeling at home, not feeling that you belong, not feeling safe in your body, in your shelter, in your physical space. So on that note, I just want to briefly share with you all some things that our local WILPF branch and other women in affinity groups have been building in what I call the belly of the peace, aka Washington, D.C. So it's so perfect that you asked that question, because something that I like to say about myself is I have the brain of an archivist, and my favorite language of love is infinitely long, heavily cited legal memos. So all of you should know that in addition to the wonderful archives that are out there, our local branch has an archive, and it's a peace archive. It's called Belly of the Peace. And this is the Belly of the Peace archive for CSW. So you can come and peruse this, see what's been going on in women-led revolutions. This is also an archive of our local branch and what our local branch members have been doing. And we also have been building a peace embassy that you are all welcome to come to and visit as well. And this is the archive of the Peace Embassy. And it's a herstory book, because to Kim's point, history is written by the victors, and it's history, it's his story. So if you go back and you see where the name Women's International League for Peace and Freedom came from, according to history, it's because at the end of World War I, they were coming up with the peace treaty that would be signed. And the women, the 47 women who crossed this ocean and were part of this movement, decided that they thought that the peace treaty that was going to be signed was not going to last in peace. It was not going to create lasting peace. And so they broke off and they created Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. That's the history. If you go into like AI or Google, that's his story of why then this organization formed in that name. And Kim, to your point, your excellent point about the sociopolitical nature of memory, I'm originally from Iran. My dad is sitting here in the front row. Thank you, Daddy-o. And he has shared with me oral tradition, oral history of feminist publications that existed in the early 1900s in Iran, where he is from. So I want to, again, keep this in mind as we say things like there have been 2 wars, or that, you know, the UN and the Nobel Peace Prize and these kinds of things. It's a very, very small part of peace building and peace growing. And, you know, if you can see, you can observe, it's very Eurocentric. And so how much are we leaving on the table by focusing so much energy on this interpretation of peace that is coming from the largest producers of war, right? Even the UN. Someone else was saying that, you know, this story, I think you, Kim, and others were mentioning that, you know, this story isn't recorded. Last year, when I was part of the WILPF US Local to Global program, which is an excellent program that sends local members to CSW, and we went on a tour of the UN, and there was this kind of series of pictures of the Declaration on Human Rights. And it was really catered to CSW, so it was catering to women. And it was, and I can show you the pictures. Every single slab said a bunch of stuff, and then it said this woman's name, and her contribution was that she added all human instead of men in the Declaration of Human Rights. Like, they changed that terminology, but every single woman who was mentioned, that was the one thing that they had to share about her, that she changed the terminology in the Declaration of Human Rights. So it's clearly storytelling, right? Because it's basically just saying, this is the contribution that women made. Everything that men did, they just came and added the word woman to it. And that is not the full story, right? At all. So that's, you know, that's to give you an idea of like these resources that exist, and to invite you into, this is going to be where, you know, you get to take a look at how herstory books are different. They have no page numbers. They are not in order. And the more time you spend on one page, the more you learn. So it's actually better to read less of a herstory book and go deeper into each page. So this is the page that belongs to our treasurer, our local branch treasurer, a young woman from Sudan who's studying philosophy and statistics. And she is working on a research proposal right now that is the basis of our economic foundation for our local branch and our growth. And the research is called A Woman-Centered Economic and Housing System. And it's been fascinating to see her develop this accounting mechanism, because that's something that we understood, is that the GDP, all these, you know, capitalism, all these accounting mechanisms are explicitly not for, do not in any way take into consideration women. There's an article, again, here's the herstory book. There's an article in the New Yorker that tells this story very clearly about where the GDP came from and how the person who developed it won a Nobel Peace Prize. And it specifically, it's he made it clear, let's see if I can find this terminology. His name was Simon Kuznets, a government economist who later won a Nobel Prize, was commissioned to create a systemic series of national accounts. Even from the start, Kuznets grasped that he was measuring the sum total of marketized output, not of human welfare. After publishing his proposed metric, he noted the obvious omission of services of housewives and other members of the family, and argued for the exclusion of expenditures he considered socially unproductive, such as military spending, consumer marketing, and financial speculation. So the person who developed this system of accounts explicitly acknowledged that this does not take into consideration these key accounting mechanisms like women's participation in the household, and he actually argued that we should not include military expenditures, consumer marketing, or financial speculation in our accounting of growth and domestic product. So thank you, Kuznets. You did the best you could. Us women are going to take it from here. We're going to come up with our own system of accounts, and we each get to decide what we consider growth and what we consider productivity. For Summer, the 21-year-old statistics and philosophy major who is our branch treasurer, she is designing an accounting system that is based on women's health and happiness. That is what her definition of growth and productivity look like. What does your definition of growth and productivity look like? I really want to know. Please come afterwards, get in touch. I actually have something of a reverse visa, you could call it. I have a bunch of these reverse visas. Should you choose to come and visit our embassy, our peace embassy, you will have one of these. And the last thing I just want to leave you with is, if you look at the etymology of the word economy, it comes from the Greek oikos nemen, oikos meaning home, nemen meaning management of. So you answer the question, what is home to you? Now you get to choose how you will hold yourself and your community accountable to the betterment and management of your home. Thanks all.
That rocks, Tara, that rocks. And I will take us home part by going back to some of the things we started, and acknowledging one of the things we've talked some about this week and in the next week is acknowledging the concerns about progress that has not been made. And I want to say that it's important not to be scared of our dismay. Just like we need to own our joy, it's okay to recognize that our dismay and our anger are what moves us. That's what gets us to push for change. So being scared of it is not the job of our emotions. The job of our emotions is to spur us to action. And to state the obvious, we have a lot of friends who are living in fear and anger and maybe confusion and maybe despair, and maybe a lot of darkness. That darkness is real, and not to belittle it, but it's a part of the season of life. The March winds are blowing, as they do every year at the CSW. As so many thought leaders are reminding us, we stand on the knowledge that the darkness is not to be feared. It is the womb. It's what our visions will spring from. One very strong theme that I've noticed this week is that, unlike a lot of folks, we know that it's not our situation that causes our emotions. It's our thoughts and our beliefs. The ceasefire isn't really a ceasefire, a CSW that can be described as flawed, unmet goals. Even as we recognize our dismay and recognize that we are not where we want to be 30 years after the Beijing Declaration, and even as we recognize shifts toward authoritarian governments worldwide that go against what we are working for, we know in our bones, as Osprey Oriole Lake says, that this is not the end of the story. In fact, these fractures that are causing so much pain individually and collectively are truly what the story of what we are becoming is built on. Our belief that humanity is connected. caught up and bound even to the humanity in Gaza and Israel and Congo and Haiti and Mississippi and Korea. We are all one. Our belief in our oneness, yeah, we are. And that's, whoop, you might have to switch. Our belief in our humanity is why we're here, right? That is what compels us to work against the powers that want to convince us otherwise. And this grounding belief is related to another that those who were in Beijing can perhaps understand even better than the rest of us. But the wonderful historians, Robin and Nina, have a role in that too. They are teaching us, they're helping us to see, and with every bit of progress, there is pushback, right? And sometimes that pushback is cruel and horrible. At times it's dystopian. At times, and we could go around and give examples. And I had one to give that about the Wilmington coup, but I'm just going to keep going. But we're so grateful for those who are documenting it in real time so that it cannot be forgotten. The pushback can break forth in policies. It can break forth in coups. We know it. And I'm saying we are more prepared for it now than ever before. The wrongs, the pushback are to be met with a stronger force, and we're here for it. One example, we know, for example, that DEI isn't just a fancy slogan. It's real and good and brings healing and belonging and makes us better. We aren't going to quit doing it because some CEO thinks it's risky or some reality TV personality president wants to get rid of it. Some of us aren't that great at it yet, but we're not giving up. So back to the March winds. We welcome the wind, the turbulence. It's part of the resistance. We stand on resistance. We stand on radical feminism, as sorry, I forgot your name was telling us. And we absolutely join hands with others who are working for change, the transformative changes that are already taking place. So we have to name them, we have to raise them up. There are transformative changes that are already taking place, and we have to lift them up to remind us we're not going back. We aren't scared of the dark. Those systems we fight against are failed systems. We are here to create what's coming next. I'm going to end with a poem by Joan Chittister. Winter is a lesson about the fine art of loss and growth. Its lesson is clear. There is only one way out of struggle, and that is by going into its darkness, waiting for the light, and being open to new growth. We thank you all for being here.